Hi, my name is Daniel Gonzalez, and I'm working as a member on the team for GenomePro 3.0 along with Roberto Arciniegas. I'm working under Will Ruiz as my mentor and Michael Robinson as the product owner. So, I'm going to walk you through today an introduction of the GenomePro platform and what GenomePro is meant to do. So GenomePro was built to address a problem that biomedical researchers and medical researchers, biologists, have nowadays, because as a result of the genome project, where the entire human genome has been successively encoded and figured out, researchers are trying to analyze the data that they can find in human genomes to see if they can make any extrapolations on that data. For example, if they could find any patterns that suggest that a person has cancer, they would like to be able to do that. Or if they could analyze large batches of DNA and figure out that certain types of people are predisposed to certain diseases or not predisposed to certain diseases. Maybe they're immune to certain things, and maybe they could figure out why and develop new cures or new treatments for diseases. All of this analysis requires a lot of number crunching because DNA is very simple data. It's only four base pairs. It's only four base pairs, I'm sorry, which are composed of four nucleotides. But the amount of data is very, very massive. So although it's very simple data, you're just dealing with four different types of things, it's gigabytes of those four different characters or terabytes of those four different characters. And so if they're trying to carry out these calculations using, for example, Excel, they're not going to be very successful. The GenomePro platform was built to facilitate this very large computational work that has to be done by these people in a very intuitive way, in a very easy way for them to manage through just a very basic website with very powerful tools embedded in it. So, as a part of GenomePro 3.0, we've worked on various user stories. In Sprint 1, we were just basically getting acquainted with the GenomePro system and how it works and how it's arranged. So that's what our user stories were for Sprint 1. And we also went through a very basic tutorial on PHP and JavaScript because we were very unprepared for web development. But in Sprint 2, we kicked things up a notch. I took on user story 282, which is redesigning the tools page. And basically, a lot of my interaction with GenomePro this semester has been on making the tools page more intuitive to use and more easy to use. Because the more user-friendly the tools page is, that's where all of the bulk of GenomePro happens. That's where all of the DNA analysis happens. The better the product is going to be, the faster these breakthroughs in medicine and in biology are going to come, and the better of a society we're going to have. And then Roberto Arciniegas took up user story 283, which is modifying the FTP file manager, because when you submit a job on GenomePro, you upload a file and apply a tool to that file. Your results are stored on an FTP server. So he worked on redesigning that FTP server and making that more ergonomic and more user-friendly. In Sprint 3, I was redesigning now not just the aesthetics, but the functionality of the tools page. So I succeeded in making a sort of batch approach to the tools page wherein a user could submit multiple jobs at the same time by creating multiple rows with every row representing a different job. And Roberto Arciniegas created a log for tracking how people use the system, how often people use the system, in preparation for creating a sort of social network, so that in the future, we're sort of laying the foundation right now for future iterations of GenomePro to allow medical researchers and biologists to interact and share results with each other using the GenomePro platform as a sort of social media directed specifically towards this genomic data research. In Sprint 4, I was working on integrating the upload files tool into this new algorithm for submitting jobs and into this new tools user interface. And I also made some progress on allowing users to sign in with an email, because users can sign in right now with either a username or the email that they registered with, and previously they weren't able to use that email to sign in. Roberto Arciniegas worked on expanding the user login statistics and collecting more data about how and what users are using on the GenomePro website. And also creating avenues for displaying that information on profile pages, which is what I'm getting into in Sprint 5. Because in User Story 288, I helped redesign the profile page to make it look more like a social media profile page with a description box and with little badges showing how long users have been members in the system and how often they log in, using some of those statistics that Roberto collected. I also moved the pending jobs table, which was previously on the tools page, to the profile page, so that on every user's profile page you can see what jobs the user has submitted already, which is again going to lay the foundation for this social network in the future. And Roberto Arciniegas worked on User Story 293, which was concerned with a very important but very small discrepancy between the file names. When GenomePro would output certain files, the file names would be incorrect and they wouldn't accurately reflect the time at which the job was terminated. And this is very important for displaying on the job history table because they're sorted based on the time in which the job was finished, the timestamp. So he had to correct that. In sprint number 6, I had to redesign again the job submission algorithm because it wasn't integrating correctly with the upload files tool and the algorithm for uploading a file. And then Roberto Arciniegas worked on User Story 294, which is creating a forum. So now he's sort of making this sort of forum on the GenomePro website where users can create topics and they can create these sort of posts, and people can reply to these posts and engage in this sort of social media interaction using GenomePro. And in Sprint 7, we were basically just preparing for the final showcase, putting all the bells and whistles, touching up the website, making it look nice and fancy, and getting all of our documentation ready. So, the use cases we implemented were, well, this is a list of all of the use cases in GenomePro, and we, this semester, either expanded on or newly implemented the create topic, create new reply, submit multiple jobs, which is an extension of submit jobs. Not an extension, it includes submit jobs as a use case. We also modified the submit jobs use case and the upload files use case. We also played around a little bit with the logging in use case, obviously to allow people to log in with their email addresses. So those are all of the use cases that we touched, but this is an overview of all of the use cases in the system. So moving on to the system design and decomposition. The system was implemented using Model View Controller as the primary architectural pattern, and this has worked really well for GenomePro. This was already implemented in the past versions of GenomePro, and so we're just continuing the tradition. And MVC, the good thing about it is it emphasizes modularity and scalability, and so if in the future versions of GenomePro decide to implement some sort of distributed way of calculating data or computing this genomic analysis, it'll be a lot easier than if there was some sort of monolithic architecture, because MVC allows modularity and it allows components to be connected and disconnected from the system very easily. So we have 3 packages: the UI package, the controller package, and the data package. The data package is the database. The controller package, which is tied to the model, sort of controls all of the web pages and all of the actual functionality on those web pages, while the views focus on presenting the information that's been calculated to the users. So this is the deployment diagram for GenomePro 3.0. It's split up into 5 tiers. We have the client tier, the web tier, the data tier, the system tier, and the logical tier. The logical tier contains all of the actual tools. The data tier is the database for storing all of the data. The The system tier contains some of the PHP and some of the JavaScript scripts and some of the functionality for making the website dynamic and generating charts and such. So database modeling. So GenomePro is very heavily structured around the tools because the tools are the core of GenomePro. So GenomePro currently has 6 tables: a jobs table, which is probably one of the most important tables, which is where all of the jobs get executed; a files table, which is where all of the users' files are stored; a users table for keeping track of all of the users; involves is just a joint table for joining jobs and files and which jobs involve which files; the tools table for keeping track of all of the tools at our disposal; and the types table, which is just an accessory table. So the main tables are the jobs, files, tools, and users tables. Those are really the 4 core tables. And we're using Postgres on an Apache 2 server. So for security, we have prepared statements so that database attacks are avoided using SQL prepared statements to verify any queries processed by Postgres. All queries run through a database library that handles row retrieval and execution with the use of protected variables. Automatic logout. After a long period of inactivity, no actions are approved by the web service and the user is sent back to the login page. Effectively, their login session has expired after a long period of inactivity. FTP password verification. Users are asked for their login information when accessing their FTP, even if they're logged into the site, just as an added extra layer of security. And that's the GenomePro 3.0 system. Thank you very much.